chop it up. But so Mac, the first question I have for you, like how we start every other interview, is when did you like start Fourtune House, and like what was your thinking behind starting Fourtune House?
Yeah, so I started Fourtune House originally as Fourtune Rap, which was like July of 2017, and like in the months leading up to that, that's when I kind of started like throwing shows, and just throwing like parties and stuff like that. But obviously with like all of my friends being musicians, the initial idea was to create a management firm and like almost like a record label. And so yeah, we kind of went ahead with that in mid 2017. But like over time with doing it, kind of just like figured out how like
shit just
working, like working closer, not only just like working closer on an artist level, but just on a community level, kind of just creates a more impactful environment for the work that we want to do. And yeah, so like that kind of progressed over time with us, like all of our individual passions and shit like that. And I guess like kind of closer towards 2018, it was like a period of just like one graduated high school was a big part of it, but like stepping out of that, just trying to like figure out ways to do more like outside of just like throwing parties and throwing shows and stuff like that. And like, you know, obviously my friends were releasing music and stuff like that, but I kind of just saw like an angle to be a little bit more like productive on the end of like what we could do like in a public space. So that's where kind of like the vision came together with like workshops. And so we transitioned over to Fourtune House kind of in the beginning of 2019, mid 2018. And our first event was like a voting awareness and like political event. And so yeah, that kind of just grew, transitioned into us doing more things around music, audio production workshops, engineering workshops, still doing shows, still doing like parties, stuff like that. And then yeah, kind of also transitioned into doing more like community actions, art-centric community actions. We did like a couple of collaborative events with like Youth for Black Lives, where we did community actions around like with music at the front of it, like production workshops and things like that. And yeah, that kind of just grew into where we are now, still being pretty centric on the end of placing art at the front of community. But yeah, just like working closer with our space and being reactive and responsive to the needs of folks around us.
I feel you. So
yeah, so that's like the short story of the shit. Obviously, between it, there's been like a lot of important steps on a personal level, and then also on like an organizational level, and like the role that all of my friends play and everything. Yeah.
Oh God! So with that transition, when you get the transition from actual like music and doing the parties into actual like, you know, events, what was did you find like a need for it? Like what made you think of like transferring over to something?
Nah, 100. I felt like, I don't know, like, and we are on just how Chicago's music scene is. There's a lot of like griminess and there's a lot of, you know, weird shit and like, yeah. So we just like felt the need to like, I don't know, do something that was rooted and like open and free and not clicky. And so like even with doing the open mics, that really was just like an open floor for like, you know, whoever wants to do their shit. And so yeah, just kind of like stepping away from, and that's even kind of why like we stepped away from just throwing like parties. It's like doing throwback night and like the house music parties and all that shit was cool, and we still want to do more once we can. But like, yeah, just like stepping away from like, I don't know, like it's a lot of just yeah. Obviously, like we know it'd be a lot of grimy Chicago shit. So like, Yeah, just like creating a space that wasn't that.
I feel you.
Was a big part of it for sure. Like it's something that I think we were very conscious in, like not creating like limiting uncomfortable spaces for people.
I feel you. Yeah, that's everything, man.
Yeah, because a lot of shit, a lot of these shows, a lot of these parties, a lot of stuff be like very uncomfortable and weird for a lot of people, and so like it's almost a responsibility as a curator to have a space that is.
That everybody can be comfortable.
That everybody can be.
I feel you. And that's what we definitely felt when we pulled up to the open mic and was booing, we was chilling with y'all. That's what we did.
Like the shit, even like you came to some of the parties and shows. Well, I don't know if you did, but like the atmosphere in like a party or a show is inherently gonna be different than that of like an open mic or some shit like that. Cause like a show is like you're going to see this designated artist. You're going there as a spectator. You feel me? As an open mic, you're getting presented an opportunity to like speak your piece, speak your mind, get whatever off your chest, and like present yourself in front of motherfuckers, shit like that. So even open up the floor to motherfuckers and still having featured artists and shit like that, you can still pull up to see an artist, but also perform with that artist. You feel me?
Right. Hell yeah. Yeah. That's dope as hell that y'all were able to think about that, like having that different lane when motherfuckers just doing shows out here and some of them shows ain't even cutting it, you feel me? So like it's just that shit just raw as hell. So when you do all these open mics and stuff, like do you feel like there was an obstacle that you had to like pass or anything with like doing something different? Because like a show, like you could go to a show and easily be all like, yeah, all we need is performers and we need a venue. Yeah. With open mics and different things like that, you kind of gotta think, outside the box.
Yeah, I definitely, even on like the financial end, I'd say like, cause obviously us just doing like open mics independently, it's not like we had a sponsor or somebody who was funding a venue or a consistent place. So like, a lot of times we would do things and like go into the red on them. Although like we always would find a way to like, make sure that we could do events and like, it be sustainable. But like definitely, we were doing free open mics. So that's one thing that is obviously an obstacle. Is like, how do we pay for this? Like, I just turned 20. You feel me? Like like when we first started doing that shit, I don't even think. I haven't really even like worked no job recently or anything like that. So like a big part of that definitely was just like finding a way to like afford that shit and doing it independently. And I think like a lot of people be in that jam because it's like you be scared to do some shit. You be scared to pay for that $500 venue because you don't think you're gonna make $500 or some shit like that. And like money isn't at the front of curation all the time, but like common business is like you want to be in the green. You feel me? So like that definitely was an obstacle we had to figure out, which is why we started even doing things like donations, optional donations for open mics and shit like that. Which like for people who understood the energy of the space, like people would donate and shit like that. So like it was smooth on that end.
And then motherfuckers was also like young as hell doing that shit too.
Right.
So like at that time, like say for example, motherfuckers doing like a $200 venue. At that time, that's a lot of fucking money, you feel me?
Right, exactly.
Like, there was a venue, motherfuckers used to do shit called, like, AMFM before it closed. It was, like, $200 to book it for the night. But I remember it was just one shit. This was before, like, this was before, like, this shit, like, the first I should be, like, just to use that as an example. Like, you get $200 for a venue, don't nobody show up. You just drop $200 and nobody just showed up. Now you just shitty as hell.
Shit, sometimes you do that shit. You have a $600 venue.
Yeah, like ain't nobody show and nobody pop out. Now you shitty as hell. But even if, what I always notice is like for me, when motherfuckers throw events and shit, and like the effect you have on motherfuckers who pull up is more important than that of like the image of the event.
Exactly. That's big right there. That's big right there.
Which like I think that took a second to understand too, because like. We've definitely had events where, we were expecting to be super busting and it's like, maybe 20 people. But then, like, sometimes that shit still be super busting because it's like, it's just a different atmosphere of the space. Like, shit, we've done open mics where we ain't had no mic and shit and it was still cool.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So, like, yeah, it be shit like that. That it do just be, like, figuring out as you go. I freestyle a lot of shit, like a lot of flyers, a lot of the content. A lot of times it just be like the day before, like shit.
Freestyle.
The protest we did in May, we literally we developed that shit like one night. Like we developed that shit in one night. Like
started calling
literally
the day before.
High key didn't take between putting that shit out and doing that shit. Didn't take a shower until niggas like did that. Like literally within the span of like like sometimes it really do just be like freestyle.
Really folks is freestyling this life shit. Straight off the dome shit.
But going back to what you said, because I definitely want more people to like hear this. So with the aspect of money, like what do you think other people could do if they have like an idea or if they want to do something and then money is the problem? Like what do you think they could do? Like what are some ways that you kind of get around that?
Yeah, dismantle capitalism, but then also like I don't know, like, and this I think comes with just having like we're a part of a collective, so like what is something that's helpful for us, we could ask for help and shit like that. And I think like that would be one thing, like just asking for help really. Like I think that's some shit that like we kind of society pushes people away with like being open with their like problems and restrictions and shit like that. But like sometimes it really do just be like, yo, I need $150 to throw this event.
Right.
You feel me? And like you probably know somebody who has that shit could help you out with it. And if you don't, you know, shit, that's where like social media becomes that tool, and that's where like word of mouth and community becomes that tool. But like, yeah, you can't do none of this shit by yourself. So like, it really do be just like asking for help with shit.
Just having a very like open and like willing group of motherfuckers around you. Feel me? Like motherfuckers, it can instantly hit motherfuckers around and be like, yo, I'm trying to do this, but I need this amount. Is anybody trying to throw?
Yeah,
you feel me? Shit like that. Eric, you feel me? It's about, you feel me? Just that. It's just for motherfuckers. It can be that simple.
Yeah.
Just crowdsourcing for like anybody like. You think might have some sort of love for you to see if they're open to helping you out for some shit like this. You probably like just being transparent. Like folks said, be transparent with like what you need.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky though, cause like you know, events is one thing, especially when you're. I think it's hard sometimes for the conversation of asking for money when you're doing something that's for profit, because people want to see profit on their end too, with investing into stuff. And so like sometimes you know that is the business still you have where it's like somebody's putting in and then getting money back. But then some people also are just comfortable investing in you and investing in the shit you do. And so like along the way we've had like definitely I've had folks who just wanted to invest in me and shit and been able to help with that. So it's a mix. It's a mix of those things. And I mean I also would say like the privilege of a network is something that's important too, and something that I understand, you know, everybody doesn't have like a good network that they can ask for help with, because a lot of times the people around us have the same restrictions and the same issues. But yeah, that's a part of it too. You know what I mean? It's like network, and knowing who to ask for help, knowing how to ask for help.
It's also just by having that innate sense of hustling in you too.
Because
like when we come from like,
you just gotta get to it sometimes.
Because you know that option. But motherfuckers like started doing like a lot of shit that motherfuckers started doing, like it wasn't really. Motherfuckers didn't always have the access shit motherfuckers have now. You feel me? Motherfuckers that like to start doing shit and getting active and shit. So like whatever it means to you to be like as a person, it means like whatever it means you gotta just hustle. You feel me?
For real.
And I mean really
gonna give it to you, man.
Yeah, really it do be like that, cause like. Even on our past community actions, like when we started recently, like literally didn't have, you know, in raising bread to do shit, like actually just didn't have the bread to do shit. So it's like being transparent is also important, because like if you don't have the money to do something and you're doing something for your community, it might be folks who are in your community who want to do the same shit and can really just help by shooting you $25. You know what I mean? And so that $25 might just be like eating out for a night, and instead you know what I mean? Like it be little shit like that, but like it's exponential.
Cause like you know, say for example, you got some bread and you know you finna use that shit to go buy you like a little tray file for the day. You feel me? And one of your homies, you feel me? They say, hey, I need 35 to go do this, and it's like you know like that 35 for them, it's gonna be way more beneficial than that 35 for you.
Exactly.
If you smoking a tray 5. Your homie can't get to the crib and bogus.
You bogus.
Bogus as hell. You gonna buy that tray 5 every day. Cause
you feel me? Like, and also I feel like all that instinct just comes from like motherfuckers like being broke. You feel me? So it's like you had like you know how like if motherfuckers been broke, you know how like that shit instills morals in you. You feel me?
For real. You don't got it.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a whole conversation on like community morals and like that common
communal
language.
morals and shit. For
Yeah, because like you gotta have that common. That's one thing I'm seeing now is like the common language is what really makes like actions work. G, like that shit, it doesn't stick if it's just like if the language is only accessible to you and the people around you, which is why like sometimes I'm very like on edge about like the impact of like corporations and academia institutions on like social change, because like a lot of times that shit isn't done in a language that's interior to like communities that it's supposed to impact, and so like that shit don't work. You know what I mean? That shit doesn't work.
That should be
a lot of times.
Like off the institution, it should be self-serving to the institution, not for the community.
No, 100. Yeah, 100% does that. 100% does that. But like, obviously, there's only so much people can do. But which is why like I think giving people like platforms are important. That's why like being able to put people who are interior to a problem on the platform is like.
Because they can speak on what's actually going on.
Yeah, exactly.
You give, say for example, you go to somewhere like either go to somewhere like the low end, go somewhere in Inglewood, go somewhere like in like these neighborhoods and shit where shit going on. You can talk to a motherfucker from it, like, yo, what's going on over here? What y'all like? What's going on? What do y'all need to see changed over here? And then that's how you build on like actually effectively going about.
Or even that, it's like putting capital in the hands of
or like
putting capital directly in the hands of people. Like sometimes it don't even be for like. People don't be needing no saviors with shit, G. You really do just be needing like
motherfuckers
money.
Motherfuckers You talk to a motherfucker like, yo, what you need? Niggas be like, yo, I'm broke as fuck. Or like my family needs to feed tonight.
It's both the time because like we definitely talk about how like money isn't important, but like in being a realist and being like somebody who's aware of just like the way. Or I believe I'm aware. Like you just gotta know. You know, you gotta know the dynamics of what puts people in motion, how power works and shit like that. And a lot of the issues that we're talking about be rooted in power and like
power.
The root of that shit comes from like materialism and ownership and like that's money. You know what I mean?
Like we live in a capitalist.
I love niggas can't dismantle that shit.
We live in a capitalist society. The goal is to dismantle capitalism, but in order to like get to that platform and do it, you have to understand how the game is played before you can change the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people don't realize. Like, I feel like too much people feed into like what's going on rather than actually like looking at the situation for what it is. Yeah. Like, this shit has been happening for so long.
Yeah, no, it's some cycle shit.
It's like motherfuckers be refusing to learn from history.
That's what it is.
If you don't learn from history is going to keep repeating itself. You're going to be stuck with the same problems for generations on generations on generations.
Exactly.
And then that's what...
Which is again where it's like... all that shit. Which is again where, like, the whole thing of, like, saviors and all of that shit within it. Like, that shit don't exist. Like, there's not, like, celebrity, saviorship, all of that shit don't do shit. Like, it don't mean shit at all. It's just like that's just components of power dynamics.
Like literally, if you're gonna help a community, help it because you gon' it's in your heart to do so.
For real.
Motherfuckers be doing all sorts like off the like they want to look good, go to like they want to look good, go to the neighborhood, and like get them little like tickets and shit like, oh, he's in the hood doing helping these people.
He donated so and so.
Yeah, you feel me? It's like
just like do that shit.
Like just do that shit. I'm not like if I'm just do it.
But like also with having a platform that does community actions, I feel like the role of inspiration is important too. So like I understand like if a celebrity is using a platform, if a celebrity is using a platform to be reflective and inspire other people, that shit is cool.
That's
within the eye of being socially active and shit. Like if you're inspiring people, like for example on some like LeBron shit, people were flaming LeBron on Twitter for reading Malcolm X book, and they were saying like he didn't know what he was talking about with shit. But it's like shit. Even if he don't like, it's still a chain. It's still a chain reaction.
Folks just read a book. You feel me? And they gonna see like, oh, folks read this book. Maybe I want to read this book.
And that's what you said. It's a chain reaction because once it starts getting into people's heads, I feel like that's what needs to change. What motherfuckers think and how they perceive things. Because just like how y'all know and just how we know. Like how this world works, that's how everybody should know. So they can move different. And motherfuckers don't know that.
100, yeah. And I mean, I think, like, also, yeah, I agree. And I feel like everybody has, like, different circumstances in which they understand shit and everybody sees shit differently. But, like, there are things that are facts. There are things that are very much history, things that, like, all you have to do is just, like, look at what the fuck happened. This is what's up. And I feel like, I think we talked about this shit last time we had the interview, but, like, just the idea of, like, knowing what's up. Like, sometimes you really do just have to know what's up.
Like, if you got that instinct, your instinct gonna tell you, like, what the fuck going on, like, what the fuck going on.
For real.
And you just gonna know.
I feel you. Yeah, it's for real. No, for real. It's always about knowing what's up. No cap.
Nah, yeah.
But we'll kind of segue into this other question. What is like pretty much the biggest differences from like starting out till now? Because I know like your followers shot up crazy, and I know you did the huge protests. So like, what has been the difference?
Shit. I mean, I look at it as just like now some of like the bigger picture ideas are a little bit closer in reach because we have better mobility. I say like, for example, even just like being able to go on the story and ask for like help from volunteers and shit with a community action or something like that. That's something that when we had 700 followers, that shit takes us texting everybody on my phone.
Oh God,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Which so now I mean that's like it's a privilege to be able to have people who want to support what we're doing. So like that's how I look at the growth in the platform. Is just like it's more people who have their eye on what we're doing and are available to support. And yeah, so like just like now I guess it's just bigger capacity. We're trying to build the team out more. I have like a lot of projects that are close to ready to launch on like ambassadorship and membership within Fourtune House. And so like even that's like I want what Fourtune House does, it doesn't have to be 100% like our ideas. You know what I mean? Creating like curriculums and event guidelines, curation guidelines to assess people who have ideas and shit like that. And so like that's where like the capacity for everything grows. Is that it's a little bit more comfort taking things out of our hand on that action side. And so now like the mode for me is like it's easier, but then it's harder because now like also
level, bro.
Also with like raising money and shit like that, there comes like responsibility and accountability. And so incorporating is a whole nother like field of business that I didn't expect to have to step into right now. Meeting with lawyers and shit like that, trying to figure out whether we're a 501 or a LLC or L3C.
Right.
Like shit like that.
Shit like that
becomes.
That shit make you grow up real quick. Like you was talking about earlier, like you seen like the shit just grew quick as hell. So motherfuckers have that responsibility of like having that big of a platform now.
Yeah, but what I would say though is like, shit, I made a new business plan 2 weeks ago, and it's not that different from my original business plan. So like, it's still the same shit, really. Like the vision is still the same. I just think like the capacity, kind of like things that I initially anticipated to be long term, are now like medium term. And then now, like, more short-term thing, we have a better capacity for, like, short-term actions and shit like that. So that's really just the only way it's, like, changed. But, like, the core vision, the core mission for the shit is still the same. We still trying to do open mics. We still trying to do shows, workshops, all of that same shit. Like, yeah.
Definitely. So how was the process? Because that's really what drew in.
That shit was the movie for it. That shit was like folks said earlier, we was at war with the police.
And it's still that. And like I would say like on some personal shit for like a month and a half, 2 months, like no self. On some like literally it was a point where like all of the guys we were staying at Airbnb together from like May. I moved out like 3 days from. I moved out like June 20th, like 3 days from my birthday and shit. But like for like literally almost 2 months, we all staying at Airbnb and shit.
We was all together and shit because we had like at that point kind of had to be.
We was staying at sister crib. We was staying. I was staying at my brother crib. Like
Now the day before, the day of the protest, we was at my sister's crib the day before that, wasn't we? The day we was out staying at my sister's crib. Just because we didn't. I didn't want to go back to the crib because I knew we was gonna be getting active and shit and like on the protest and shit. We went there, and this the day of like the King. No, this not the King Drive shit. This is,
it was King. Yeah.
So we started at the King Drive. So we walked from King Drive all the way to where the fuck we walked to up north?
To
Wrightwood.
Yeah. Walk. we was like going like 10 miles. Police, all types of
we was throwing them off because typically like motherfuckers do like they'll give the police their route so motherfuckers don't intercept their protests and shit like that. But we was throwing them off. We didn't want them to know where the fuck he was going. So he was in the front of the protest. We was throwing them out. We was like, why the fuck? Like why they kept bringing their bikes shit around.
Yeah,
and then we had the speed went from King Drive. We stopped at City Hall. No, we stopped at the precinct. We stopped at the precinct on
18th.
On 18th. Had a look. We literally talking to the police commissioner. I was like, "Yo, what the fuck going on with y'all?" Like literally face to face.
I mean, like it was people who was still stuck inside of the precinct. So like we were there to get people out. You know what I mean? To like hold people accountable, to hold the police accountable. We had the names of people who was stuck in the precinct.
Pulled up deep as hell to look them dead in their eyes.
And it was fucked up. It was fucked up because like. Also, that was like the day they brought out like the National Guard and shit. So like
all them trucks was trailing, like the National Guard was trailing us.
While we on the south side and shit, like it's also thousands of people up north and shit. Cause we had 2 starting points for the protests and shit. We split up, and like
we were supposed to meet at City Hall, but they got blocked off. The north side got blocked off.
And that's like they like literally pull hoses on motherfuckers. Like it was crucial. Like they was tweaking.
Back in the day type shit.
It's
history. It repeats itself.
And I think like even now I'm looking at like, how like the actions that Good Kid, Mad City and Black Rising and BLM Shy and like a lot of other organizations have been, leading and it's really like the energy from the city side and the police side has not shifted 1% at all. And like it's still the same. I don't know, because they're protected, obviously. So it's like, for them, that's just a day at work, and it's a crazy day at work.
Exactly.
But, like, they get to go back to work the next day. You know what I mean? And, like, for us, like, not only is that shit, like, physically fatiguing and tiring and shit, but it's also on some, like, mental shit, too. Like I know if it was a second where, like, I just didn't even have a voice. Like, I have shit to say. I have shit to say for a week, maybe 2 weeks, just because like that shit was like literally just like seeing red, and like that shit it's very difficult interaction facing like restrictive power like the police, and also knowing that like niggas can still get arrested and shit. So it's just like a lot of like. That shit was crazy. It was crazy. It's still crazy.
Simple terms, that
it's
shit
still
was
up there.
crazy.
Yeah, it's still up there.
It's all the way up there. It's CPD case a lot of for all that shit.
How did you feel about actually putting together a protest and actually
it's real all
together?
Like folks, it's reactionary. Like, because at that time, everybody was collectively kind of like it wasn't even just us. Like, you could feel the tension in the air of the city. Everybody was feeling the same way. That shit. So all it took was like motherfuckers to say, "Hey, we protesting this shit, me here," and motherfuckers like, "Alright, say less."
And I mean, I think also like, and I'm glad, and I feel like Fourtune House played a big role in like the spark of what's going on right now. Because we did a couple of them, and I think like even that being said, like it's a collective energy. So, like we want to do more protests with Fourtune House, but like we also can support too. And like even just personally and through the platform, being present, sharing resources, all of that shit is helpful in like helping people get out there and get their voices out.
Motherfuckers don't want to take away from like no other organizations that's currently like doing protests. So the motherfuckers like literally off the playing like the support role and shit. Like say for example like someone like Black Rising the Good Kid, Mad City right now who's like still doing like protests right and shit like that. We want to like extend our shit to like really just because they was there fucking with us. You feel me?
Exactly.
We want to extend the same courtesy to them. We don't want to do hella actions that's gonna take away from their actions and
exactly.
shit like that.
100. Which and that's like all it really is though. It's just like support role because like I see that shit and I tell this shit to people who hit me up to support and do shit with Fourtune House all the time. Like my platform is also other people's platform, so it's like I extend that same energy and that same effort into like sharing other folks' resources that we would with our own and shit. So like, yeah, that's really all it is. And so it's like it is a collective community thing, but like we're also looking at other ways that we can be like impactful within our community on the same end of like just alternative protests. And so like we stepped into things like food security and cleanups and shit like that. That's ways to kind of like fill the gaps on just some of the needs that motherfuckers had in between all that shit. Cause like that, like even with all the like responses, you know, obviously people say looting and shit, but like, you know, with all of that, it definitely did have like to an extent, you know, obviously a negative effect on our environment within our neighborhoods, because there was points where people were breaking into stores on the south side and shit like that. And so like, you know, a big part of that is being ready to like call a cleanup or some shit like that. And even if it's not looting, even if it is, you know, just a normal weekend, like shit like that is important and people be needing that shit. We've done like we've done 2 grocery drives and supported other ones. So like shit like that is also important too, because you have to like fill the gaps on the shit. Cause like it's fuck the police, but like we also have to have foundation too. So like
that's a big thing.
You can't just be out there with no mission, no structure.
Yeah, cause like what do we go back to? You feel me? And so that's where it's important to know how to have that role and like not only just like having healing space, but like tangibility is also important, which is why like planning to open up the public space is like a big step in that tangibility, a big step in that where do we fall back to, where do we have collective actions, where do we have community boards and shit like that. Like that's where a public space and things like that becomes like foundational pieces in the movement. So that's kind of just where like I see, you know, long-term impact and shit.
I feel you. I feel you. That is long-term impact. That is. But what do you think is the most like? What do you think is like your greatest accomplishment like right now with Fourtune House, like so far?
Shit.
If you had to say.
I mean, I think that first protest we did was very powerful. Mm-hmm. I mean, like
the walking from King Drive, especially taking place on King Drive.
Yeah, we led. I mean, like it started a block away from my house, like where I grew up at and shit, and like we led maybe close to 1,000 folks from the south side to City Hall, but then also had a movement on
motherfuckers up north.
Yeah, movement on the north side.
Everybody convened. It was that shit. When everybody from the south side met with the motherfuckers on the north side, that shit was like, it was. We could show you the pictures of that shit. That shit was just, the energy was crazy.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, that's definitely for me. Like I feel like that's probably one of the biggest accomplishments. Yeah, I mean that shit to me was cool. Also, Tessa Thompson followed us on Instagram.
Tessa Thompson did follow us.
Which is cool as shit. It's cool as shit.
That's what's up.
Yeah. Tessa Thompson followed us on Instagram. That's all.
Is that,
yeah, that's all I'm saying.
So what do you think? What do you think about like the future? Like, where do you think you could take this? Like, what is the huge plan? Because I know off camera we were talking about like the studio and the studios and everything.
Yeah, nah, I feel like it's all like with everything niggas are doing is within the mission of like freedom and liberation. So like that's the end goal is like free spaces, liberated spaces. you know, I'm reading this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, like, ideals along anti-racism, ideas along anti-capitalism, anti-power dynamics, all of that, and still within that, like, yeah, it's just like building the culture. And so, like, I think we talk about anti-capitalism and liberation, and we expect it to be like us still not being able to reach the things we want, because like for some folks, we value luxury and things like that. So I feel like, again, it's just like amplifying Black ideas and Black culture to the highest degree. So if that is Black luxury, that's Black luxury. But, like, you know what I mean, just like breaking those barriers and creating space for people to just do that shit, and for us to do our shit too. So, like, yeah, it's a mix of all of that shit. You know what I mean? It's a mix of us doing things for our immediate needs personally, and then also for our community needs. So, yeah, that's how I see that shit.
So, I feel you. Like, creating your own shit. Like,
yeah, but it's playing a role too. Like, it's playing a role in the bigger movement as well too. So that's all it really is.
Do y'all feel like any pressure? Like, obviously, like, y'all like 20 years old, a couple years younger than me, but, like, do y'all feel like there's like a weight on y'all shoulders?
I mean, I'll say, like, for me specifically, because, like, I've been working with him with Fourtune House and shit like that. It's like, as an artist, I got my own little idea, so I have to shift my platform, like, speak on, like, which is already shit I was already doing, like, speaking on, like, the shit going on, but I don't really feel like there's no pressure to do it, because it's already shit that motherfuckers, you know, motherfuckers was trying, like this is shit motherfuckers wanted to do.
It's a part of you.
Yeah, you feel me? It's like all reaction. I don't think it's really.
Yeah, I feel like all the pressure is just on the technicalities of shit, but like on some passion shit and on some like personal shit, nah, because it's like just what niggas.
It's just what niggas do.
But like, definitely, I say like it's a lot of learning, and there's a lot of shit that I don't know yet on the business side of shit. So it's like understanding that shit, understanding how to like be accountable as a brand and business owner, because that's something that we don't talk about enough, is that like with having a business, with having a public image, with having things like that, you have to be responsible, you have to be accountable, and not only just the paperwork of shit, the way you treat people, all of that shit is important. And so like, yeah, that's one thing I would say, is like you have to have your eye open. You have to know how to really, and and that's just the nature of running a good business. You know what I mean? And like for me, my OG has been a entrepreneur. She's a fashion designer. She's had a business for 20 years and shit. And so like I picked that shit up from her as like accountability. You know what I mean? Like I always wonder like why my OG meets with her accountant, you know, every 2 months, every month and shit like that. But it's like shit is important. That's how you're sustainable and viable. Is being accountable on all levels, client accountability, all of that shit.
That's real big. So last question. Like, what advice would you give like anybody that is like shit going through this right now, COVID and all this shit, and they want to like go outside the box and like make a business, or just kind of go along the likes of doing something that you're doing?
Go crazy.
Yeah, I'd just say like be realistic to your environment. Don't place expectations on folks to come out and do things. You have to just understand like what can you do within your reality. Cause like obviously the risk of us being in a pandemic is real, and so like if we want to do a show or some shit like that, we probably can't do it in the capacity that, you know, we could do in the past. But like, yeah, it's just like being, and not even to just say like be creative, any ideas, but just like think of like ways that you can be impactful within your reality, and like be more observant, be more insightful, be more reflective, and use that reflection in creating new ideas. And I think being reflective and insightful is important. Like with even like the community actions that we've been doing, like all of that shit is reactionary. All of that shit is like a response to needs that we're seeing. It's not self-serving or anything. So I feel like the time of being a self-serving community artist, community creative, that shit over with. And it's like we can still be reflective, we can still be artists, we can still be ourselves, we can still do things for ourselves. But like, I think when we talk about impact and we talk about community and shit like that, it looks different now. Because there's obviously that health barrier and shit. But like, also just on some like, that and a combination of like social unrest and shit it's like a responsibility thing.
I feel you. It needs to get taken care of. But I appreciate y'all coming out.
Nah, honest shit, we appreciate y'all. Yeah.